So looking for the intersection of structures, looking for intersections of fluids, looking for traces of uranium that would be in and around these structures. And then ultimately, the big prize is a significant deposit that might form in the lower Kales, such as the Ranger and Jabiluka projects.
Hello and welcome back to the Proactive Studio. I'm Tyler Tully, and joining me today is Alligator Energy CEO Greg Hall to talk about its drilling program at the Nabarlek North project in the Northern Territory. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Nice to see you.
Before we get into talking about your upcoming campaign, there was some news in the uranium market last week with a lot of uranium equities moving up today, including yourself by around 16%. What are your current takes on the market right now?
Yeah, certainly there was a significant announcement from Kazatomprom. Kazatomprom is the largest producer of uranium in the world, and they made an announcement or an update for their future production on Friday, which impacted the market from early US time, in fact, Friday. And they announced that they were targeting ultimately some time ago to achieve up to 100% production out of their subsurface agreements, which means the maximum they could do. But it looks like they're going to be somewhere between 15 and 20% less than that. And the consensus is around 17% less going from 2025 on. There's a number of reasons for this. They've had an issue with supply of sulfuric acid for their in situ recovery type of mining method. They've had some delays in production, in ramp ups and development of new projects. And so that's been part of the impact for the reasoning. So that's impacted the market generally positively. Now, US equities went up on Friday. Australian equities have followed again today. Now, the other thing that's not widely known in the market, and it's basically just industry insider information, is that Kazatomprom, while it produces a significant amount of uranium directly, it has some joint venture partners like Cameco and Orano that have some supply from there. But the Kazakh production, the majority of it is bought by China directly, something like up to 45, 49%. And now Russia has itself also been a significant buyer of Kazakh uranium. So the sort of estimate in the marketplace is that really only about 20 or 25% of Kazakh production is available to the West, essentially. Now, that's an estimate. It's an industry insider. It's not declared. But nonetheless, that really starts to put the picture of what's changed significantly geopolitically from the biggest producer in the world supplying uranium into Western utilities. So that bodes well for companies like ours and others that have got projects advancing.
Definitely. And let's get into your project now. About 2 years of exploration work have formed the targets in this program. Can you talk us through what you've actually done?
Yeah, look, there was this area of tenements, 11 tenements to the north of the old Nabarlek mine, which is why we call it Nabarlek North. We were granted these in early 20 just as COVID hit, and then access was restricted to Arnhem Land for some years. So we really only got on the ground late in 2022 for initial program. The interesting thing about this area compared to our other projects there to the south, this area is not overlain by the sandstone rock, the hard sandstone covering rock there, which makes up that beautiful escarpment up in that country. So it means it's more accessible, but it has its own issues. It's got a very deep weathering or weathered profile where the rocks themselves are masked by the weathering over the top of them. So we initially started a program of shallow stab holes, anywhere from 20 to 100 meters, to try to get an idea of the geology underlying. The issue with that was, while it gave us good information, the access was good ground-wise, but difficult environmental-wise. A lot of trees, a lot of growth areas, a lot of wetlands, and so that did make that a little bit more awkward. But we did get some good initial information, which we've used as part of our geochemical modelling. So we moved in the second year in 23 to do continue some of that, but also then move towards some deeper RC drilling. And that deeper reverse circulation drilling did impact some or find some initial zones of uranium to the north of the U40 prospect, which our neighbours to the south have. And that was good. And we're doing some more work on that as part of this drilling program. We also did some deeper RC drilling in other parts in the southern targets. So it was the first foray into targeting based on geology and structural interpretation of the area there. Now, this year, in preparation for this program, we've run a major magnetic and radiometric survey, tying in a lot broader magnetics across the whole tenement package. We've done ground truthing and surveys looking at where there's interesting rocks potential through outcropping rather than just granites. And that's helped shape a larger targeted program for this year. Now, it's still not a lot of meters, but it's very targeted to key targets with an allowable amount of meters. If we find something interesting, we could drill additional holes. So that's really what the background is for what we're doing.
So you've got this background and it's shaped the program so far, but what do you hope to uncover in this program?
The key thing for us is looking at the interaction between the basement Archean rocks, which are generally the source of the granites, the structures that might bring fluids up from depth where this uranium comes from and up into the overlying strata, in particular the Kale Formation, the lower Kale Formation, where traditionally the chemistry has been right for these uranium deposits to form. So looking for the intersection of structures, looking for intersections of fluids, looking for traces of uranium that would be in and around these structures, and then ultimately, the big prize is a significant deposit that might form in the lower Kales, such as the Ranger and Jabiluka projects. So we are drilling to the north of U40 again, following that structure, which has shown to be fertile in the past, both our neighbours to the south and in our own area, and then identification where there is some other interesting lineaments and magnetic radiometric sort of examples. You can have a pale or very light level of radiometrics at the surface, which might indicate something deeper. So those sort of targets. So we're looking for the structures, we're looking for trace of uranium, and we're looking for the right rocks that can carry these fluids and deposit them.
And you've also received financial support from the Northern Territory government. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Look, that's correct. We're grateful for this. We applied for 2 co-funding grants. And we got one for the magnetics radiometric survey, because that was over a much broader picture where there really wasn't a lot of this information. And that was up to $100,000. We also applied for and received some assistance for stratigraphic drilling in areas where there has not been the sort of drilling looking at the underlying geology in this tenement package that we have. So both of them have helped support our program, which we've got underway now.
So when can we expect the results?
Well, look, the drilling work will go at least to the end of September, maybe a little more if we find some interesting things. We need to bring rock chips back for assay. Even if we take scintillometer counts and XRF, you really need to bring the samples back for assay. We would anticipate November is the right time to get those assays, just based on the amount of work underway with the assay labs. And that's sort of the timing we would hope be able to pull that information together. Anything significant we can find on the way, we'll announce straight away. But certainly we think those assays, because you're not looking just for uranium, you're looking for the chemical signatures that come with it as well. So we need that assay information around November.
Greg, exciting times not only for Alligator, but the uranium market as a whole. Thanks for your insights and your time today.
Thank you very much, Tyler. That's great to talk to you.